The evening light filtered softly through the living room curtains, painting the walls with golden warmth. A quiet hum of normalcy filled the house, the soft ticking of the wall clock, the faint whisper of wind brushing against the garden, and the distant chatter of neighbors winding down their day. She sank into the couch, a cup of tea warming her hands. The steam rose lazily, curling toward the ceiling, carrying the delicate scent of chamomile. Outside, the garden swayed gently, leaves glimmering in the fading sunlight. Everything was ordinary. Peaceful. Safe. Her dog padded into the room. He moved quietly, each step deliberate, his soft paws making barely a sound on the hardwood floor. A medium-sized companion with expressive eyes that seemed to see more than the world offered, he paused at the edge of her legs. For a moment, he simply sat, tilting his head slightly, as if waiting for permission to approach. Then, as if guided by some unspoken intuition, he stretched and nudged her hand toward his chest. She chuckled softly. "What is it, boy?" she murmured, brushing a strand of hair from her face. The dog's eyes held a quiet intensity, focused, connected, knowing. Slowly, he began to scratch her stomach, right there, at the same spot he had discovered the night before. And the night before that. It wasn't playful. It wasn't random. There was a purpose behind every careful, precise movement. She watched him, curiosity mingling with warmth in her chest. Each night, this ritual repeated, and each night, it seemed to hold a secret she hadn't yet discovered. The soft pads of his paws, the gentle tilt of his head, the subtle whine that barely escaped his throat, they all spoke a language only they shared. Her fingers lingered on his fur. "You've got something to tell me, don't you?" she whispered. The words were quiet, almost breathless, like sharing a secret with a friend who already knew it. He paused for a heartbeat, eyes meeting hers, and in that stillness, a world of emotion passed between them. Love. Care. Concern. And something else, something she couldn't quite name yet. She sipped her tea slowly, letting the warmth sink into her chest, but her attention never left him. The garden outside darkened, shadows stretching across the room, but the golden glow from the lamp above softened every edge, giving everything a cinematic warmth. Her heart ached softly with a mix of wonder and anticipation. There was no fear here, no urgency. Just a quiet pull at something deeper, something waiting to be understood. He leaned closer, resting his head against her lap, then pressed his paw gently to her side. The motion was simple, unassuming, but it carried weight. She laughed softly, a breathy, incredulous sound. "Every night, the same spot. What are you trying to tell me, boy?" For a moment, she thought it was habit. Maybe he just liked the texture of her sweater. But even as she entertained the thought, she knew it wasn't ordinary. There was purpose here. Intent. A silent message. Her eyes followed him as he lifted his nose, sniffing carefully, scanning with the patience of someone waiting for a sign. And in that soft, warm light, his gaze met hers again, steady, unwavering, full of quiet urgency. Something in her chest tightened, not with fear, but with an emotion she couldn't quite name. Hope? Anticipation? A gentle curiosity that wrapped itself around her heart like a familiar blanket. The tea had gone cold, forgotten. The wind outside had shifted, rustling the leaves in a whisper that somehow mirrored the soft mystery unfolding inside. She leaned back, letting the dog's presence fill the room, and in the pause between breaths, she realized how deeply connected they already were. And then he looked up at her, tilting his head just slightly, eyes soft but intense, and she felt it, an unspoken message hovering between them. It was a quiet moment, simple yet profound. Ordinary life wrapped around something extraordinary. Her voice was barely a whisper. "What is it, boy? What are you trying to show me?" And in that moment, she knew it was more than just scratching. There was a story here. A meaning she hadn't yet discovered. Something warm. Something true. Something beautiful. The dog blinked slowly, his eyes holding hers with patient expectation. He nudged her gently, as if urging her to notice, to understand, to trust. And she did. Because whatever this was, she felt it deep in her chest, in the quiet rhythm of the evening, in the soft golden glow surrounding them. She knew it was important. She didn't know why. She didn't know how. But she knew it mattered. And she had a feeling, a soft, insistent feeling, that what the dog sensed would change everything. The next evening arrived with the same golden calm. Sunlight stretched lazily across the living room floor, spilling warmth over every surface. The air smelled faintly of fresh linen from the laundry she had folded earlier, mingling with the soft scent of the candle she always lit in the late afternoon. Everything was familiar. Everything was ordinary. Her dog entered the room with the quiet confidence of someone who knew exactly what he was doing. His paws made the slightest sound against the wooden floor. Yet, in his steps, there was purpose. Every inch of his body spoke attention, soft, deliberate, focused. She watched him pause near the couch, tail swishing slowly, as if weighing his next move. Then, without hesitation, he stretched upward, nudging her hand toward him. She smiled softly, brushing his fur as he settled beside her once again. And just like every night before, he began scratching her stomach, the exact spot he had chosen since this mysterious ritual began. It wasn't a whim. She could feel it. Her eyes followed him carefully, noting the way his ears twitched at the faintest sound outside the window, the subtle way his nose lifted to sniff the air, the almost imperceptible pause before each gentle scratch. His movements were measured, intentional, and unspoken communication she was just beginning to understand. "You're telling me something, aren't you?" she whispered, voice calm, almost reverent. He pressed his head gently against her side, then lifted one paw and rested it lightly on her stomach. The action was so soft, so deliberate, it made her heart ache with warmth. There was a reason behind this, something beyond instinct, something far deeper. As she watched him, her curiosity grew. She noticed the subtle ways he scanned the room, the way his eyes flickered toward the corner of the couch, then back to her. His body moved with a rhythm she couldn't quite explain, like a dancer in a quiet ballet, each movement intentional, meaningful, precise. She took a deep breath, letting the warmth of the room settle around her. Her fingers traced along his fur, feeling the steady beat of his heart, the gentle warmth of his body pressed close. The connection between them deepened with every passing second. She felt it in her chest, a quiet understanding that this was more than a simple nightly habit. Outside, the wind stirred the branches of the garden, making the leaves shiver in soft whispers. The dog's ears twitched, his head lifted slightly, sniffing the air again. She followed his gaze and noticed a fleeting glance toward the hallway, a subtle tilt of his body suggesting he was aware of something she couldn't see. Her heart tightened, not with fear, but with a quiet wonder. How could he sense what she could not? How could he understand, with such gentle precision, the exact place, the exact moment, the exact intention of his actions? She chuckled softly, brushing her fingers across his head. "You're something else, aren't you, boy?" He responded with a soft, patient gaze, as if acknowledging her words but reminding her that this was bigger than conversation, bigger than understanding. His intuition, quiet, persistent, unwavering, was guiding her in ways she didn't yet comprehend. Hours passed in a warm, comfortable silence. The tea on the table had cooled completely, forgotten in the quiet rhythm of the evening. She leaned back into the couch, letting the dog curl against her side. Every soft scratch of his paw, every gentle nudge, seemed to carry a message she had yet to decode. And then, without warning, he shifted slightly, eyes locking onto hers. There was a clarity there she hadn't seen before. Not urgency. Not fear. But a quiet insistence, an unspoken message delivered with complete confidence. She held her breath. The room seemed to stretch, time slowing, every detail coming alive, the muted glow of the lamp, the way shadows softened the edges of the furniture, the gentle rise and fall of his chest against hers. "You're trying to tell me something important," she whispered, voice soft and unhurried. I don't know what yet." He tilted his head slightly, almost as if nodding in agreement, then rested his chin on her stomach, paw still lightly pressed against her side. She felt the warmth of his body, the trust in his gaze, the depth of his intuition. It was a connection that transcended words, a bond built on patience, empathy, and quiet understanding. Minutes passed, but it felt like an eternity. Each soft movement of his paws carried weight. Each glance, each tilt of the head, each gentle nudge was a thread connecting their hearts. She realized that what he sensed, what he had been trying to show her every night, was something that mattered. Deeply. Truly. Fundamentally. She leaned her head against the back of the couch, letting her eyes close for a moment, taking in the quiet, the warmth, the rhythm of this gentle ritual. In the soft glow, she could feel the story unfolding, slowly, gently, beautifully. The dog lifted his head and looked at her again, eyes glimmering with the kind of awareness that makes a person pause, makes the heart flutter with soft anticipation. He wasn't just scratching her stomach. He was guiding her attention, pointing her toward something she couldn't yet see. And she felt it, this quiet truth, this intimate whisper between two souls, a truth waiting to be revealed. Her chest tightened in that familiar, warm way. A secret was being shared, a message carefully delivered through soft, intentional gestures. She didn't understand it yet, but she could feel it. And in that soft, golden-lit room, with the wind rustling outside and the dog's patient presence at her side, she knew that his intuition was extraordinary. And that whatever he sensed, it was only the beginning. The mornings had begun to carry a subtle excitement. She noticed it in herself before she even saw him. The sun spilled through the kitchen window, warm and golden, brushing the counters and floors with gentle light. The smell of fresh coffee mingled with toast, small, ordinary pleasures, yet her mind was elsewhere, on him, her loyal companion, her quiet guide. He padded into the room as usual, ears pricked slightly, tail moving slowly like a metronome. He didn't bark or whine. He didn't demand attention. Instead, he simply sat near the edge of the rug, watching her as she moved about. There was a stillness to his presence, a quiet patience that made her feel as if he was thinking, observing, understanding. "Good morning, boy," she whispered, brushing a hand along his soft fur. His eyes met hers, calm and deliberate, and then, as if he had rehearsed this countless times in the quiet hours, he nudged her gently and padded toward the couch. Once there, he circled once, twice, then curled up close, resting his head on her stomach. And without missing a beat, he began scratching, precise and familiar, the same spot as always. She paused mid-sip of her coffee. Her curiosity was growing, she could no longer chalk this up to habit or comfort. Something in his behavior suggested understanding. A gentle, unspoken awareness. She watched him, studying the way his paws moved, the tilt of his ears, the slight lift of his nose. Each movement carried intention, a quiet message she was only beginning to decipher. She leaned forward, whispering softly, "Every night, every morning, what is it you're trying to show me?" The dog paused for a moment, eyes locking with hers, unblinking. There was an insistence there, gentle but undeniable, as if he were saying, "Notice. Pay attention. Understand." Days passed, and with each passing day, her fascination deepened. She began to take notes mentally, patterns of his movements, the times he chose to approach her, even the smallest nuances in his behavior. He was more than a pet. He was a silent teacher, guiding her awareness with patience and care. In the evenings, she would sit quietly on the couch, watching him. Sometimes he would scratch her stomach multiple times, sometimes only once, but the precision never wavered. She started imagining possibilities, letting her mind wander softly through ideas. Was it instinct? Was it comfort? Or was there something more profound she hadn't yet discovered? One night, she noticed a subtle change. As he scratched her, he glanced toward the hallway, ears twitching ever so slightly, nostrils flaring just a bit. She followed his gaze and realized he was aware of the faintest sounds, a creak in the floor, the whisper of the wind against the door. She felt her heart quicken with gentle anticipation. She leaned closer, stroking his fur. "You're guiding me somewhere, aren't you?" Her voice was soft, calm, reflective. There was no urgency in it, only wonder. And as if answering, he nudged her again, paw resting lightly on her stomach, eyes glimmering with quiet focus. Her curiosity evolved into something deeper. She began observing more than just his scratching. She noticed the way he adjusted his body when she shifted positions, the subtle ways he seemed to sense her mood, the quiet gestures that spoke volumes without a single word. She began to trust his intuition in ways she hadn't expected. The bond between them deepened with each observation. It wasn't just companionship anymore. It was a connection that transcended routine, one built on mutual awareness and gentle understanding. He was more than her dog, he was her silent guide through moments she didn't even realize needed guidance. The evenings became a time for reflection. She would sit with a blanket over her legs, lamp casting a warm glow across the room, and allow herself to focus fully on him. Every gentle scratch, every careful nudge, every patient gaze carried a soft tension, a quiet rhythm that demanded attention. And in that quiet, she started to notice patterns, subtle, almost imperceptible ones. The moments when he scratched more urgently, the nights when his gaze lingered longer, the times he seemed more insistent about her attention, all these little details pulled at her mind, urging her to piece together the meaning. She began sharing her observations with friends, though cautiously. I don't know, he's acting like he knows something, she said one evening, brushing a lock of hair behind her ear. Friends smiled politely, amused but skeptical. Yet she didn't mind. She was learning to trust her own observations, her own quiet awareness. By now, the nightly ritual had become a sacred rhythm. The soft glow of the lamp, the gentle warmth of the room, the quiet scratching of his paws, it was a meditation, a bond, a gentle unfolding of something unseen yet profoundly felt. She realized, slowly, that her curiosity had turned into trust. Trust in him. Trust in the moments they shared. Trust in the silent communication that flowed between them in soft gestures and quiet glances. And then one night, as he paused and looked at her with that same intense but gentle focus, she felt a shiver of anticipation. It was subtle, not sharp, not fearful, but it moved through her chest like a whisper. She knew, even without understanding fully, that his intuition had a message she was ready to receive. Her fingers lingered on his fur, her heart soft, her breath calm. She whispered again, I don't know what it is yet, but I trust you. And he leaned closer, resting his head on her stomach, eyes never leaving hers, patient, steady, unwavering. For the first time, she truly understood the depth of his awareness. This wasn't instinct alone. This was intuition. Gentle, deliberate, emotionally tuned. He was guiding her attention, guiding her heart, preparing her for something she had yet to fully discover. And as she sat there, bathed in warm lamplight, watching him carefully, she realized that her curiosity was no longer just a fleeting thought. It had become a soft, insistent awareness, a growing certainty that whatever her dog was sensing, it mattered. Deeply. Quietly. Beautifully. And she knew, in the marrow of her being, that the truth he was guiding her toward was closer than she had ever imagined. The days had begun to blend together in a warm, comforting rhythm. The sunlight spilled softly through the living room windows, brushing over the couch, the wooden floor, the small bookshelf by the corner. The ordinary sounds of life, the hum of traffic outside, the faint chirp of birds, the gentle ticking of the clock, felt softer somehow, more intimate, as if the room itself recognized the quiet bond growing within it. She sank onto the couch one evening, blanket draped over her knees, the dog padding in and curling up beside her as always. His paws pressed gently against her side, head resting lightly on her stomach. And then, almost ritualistically, he began his familiar scratching. It wasn't just a simple gesture anymore. It was a conversation without words. A language spoken through soft movements, glances, nudges, and touches. She could feel the depth of his attention, the patience in every paw, the careful intention behind every gentle scratch. She closed her eyes for a moment, breathing slowly, letting the warmth of his presence sink into her chest. There was something extraordinary in the simplicity of this connection, the way two beings could communicate so profoundly without uttering a single word. You've got me thinking, more than I ever thought a dog could, she whispered softly, fingers tracing along his fur. He shifted slightly, pressing closer, as if acknowledging her words. There was a trust here, a quiet understanding that grew with each passing day, each soft evening ritual. She noticed details she hadn't before, the way he shifted his gaze toward her face as if gauging her mood, the subtle lift of his ears when a distant sound caught his attention, the gentle nudge when her hand lingered too long on the blanket instead of on him. Each action was deliberate, meaningful, and full of warmth. The bond deepened in ways that were almost imperceptible. She began leaving small notes for herself about their evenings, patterns, timings, gestures. It wasn't analytical, it was a form of meditation, a way to pay attention, to honor the quiet communication flowing between them. Evenings stretched into nights, the room bathed in a soft golden glow from the lamp, shadows curling gently along the walls. The world outside dimmed, the sounds softened, and within the cozy light, she felt a profound sense of presence. She leaned back, letting her head rest against the couch, her hand brushing along his back. "You're more than a dog, aren't you?" she murmured. "You see things I don't even notice." He lifted his head, eyes locking with hers, patient, unwavering, soft yet insistently focused. She felt a shiver of recognition run through her. He understood something she hadn't yet realized, and he wanted her to see it too. That night, the scratching continued longer than usual, deliberate and gentle. She noticed how he occasionally paused, sniffing the air, scanning the room as though checking for something invisible, something only he could sense. Her curiosity, once mild and playful, had transformed into quiet awe. She was beginning to trust his intuition, to lean on it in subtle, instinctual ways. She found herself talking to him more, soft words, quiet observations, questions posed in gentle tones. "Why do you keep coming back to this spot?" she whispered. "What are you trying to tell me?" And in response, he nudged her hand with his nose, pressed his paw softly to her stomach, eyes meeting hers with that same deliberate intensity. There were moments when she paused, listening to her own heartbeat, aware of the rhythm of his breathing, the warmth of his body against hers, the soft cadence of his movements. It was a connection that went beyond simple companionship, a bond threaded through attention, intuition, and quiet understanding. The evenings became sacred, small rituals of trust and love. She would watch him carefully, noticing every subtle gesture, every flick of an ear, every tilt of the head. And in return, he seemed to watch her, to see into her heart, to sense her thoughts, to respond to the unspoken currents of her emotions. She started noticing subtle changes in herself. Patience grew. Awareness sharpened. Even small worries of the day seemed to soften in the warmth of his presence. There was an emotional clarity, a quiet joy that settled deep in her chest, a feeling of being seen and understood without judgment or expectation. One night, as he paused mid-scratch and lifted his eyes to hers, she felt an unspoken invitation, a gentle urging to pay closer attention, to trust his guidance, to lean into the intuition he offered. Her curiosity had transformed into faith. She no longer questioned whether his actions had meaning, she simply accepted that they did. Her laughter and soft whispers filled the room, mingling with the rustle of leaves outside and the quiet hum of the house. She brushed a strand of hair from her face, her eyes glimmering with warmth. "I think I'm starting to understand, or at least to trust you, boy." He pressed closer, nudging her gently, as if acknowledging her words, encouraging her heart to open just a little wider. In that soft golden light, surrounded by quiet, ordinary comforts, she realized something profound. Their connection was not about answers. It was about presence. About trust. About love. And as she leaned back, resting her head against the couch, feeling the steady rhythm of his breathing and the warmth of his body, she understood the truth of their bond. It was intimate, gentle, and beautiful, a quiet dance of intuition and emotion, unfolding night by night, moment by moment. And she knew, even without fully understanding, that whatever he sensed, it mattered deeply. That his purpose in these quiet, deliberate gestures was real, meaningful, and profoundly connected to her heart. That night, she held his gaze a little longer, letting the soft tension of anticipation mingle with the warmth of their shared understanding. And in that pause, she felt a wave of gratitude, a quiet wonder, and a gentle certainty that whatever lay ahead would be beautiful. The following morning dawned soft and quiet, sunlight spilling through the curtains in long, golden streaks. The air smelled faintly of coffee and fresh linen, the house calm, ordinary, but there was a new energy in the room. Something subtle, almost imperceptible, had shifted. She sat at the kitchen table, stirring her coffee slowly, watching the steam curl upward. Her dog patted in quietly, his soft paws barely making a sound on the hardwood floor. He paused at the edge of the rug, ears perked, tail flicking slowly, and tilted his head in that familiar, deliberate way. Without hesitation, he patted over and nudged her hand, curling up beside her once again. His eyes met hers, steady, calm, but insistent. She smiled softly. "Good morning, boy, ready for another day of secrets?" she whispered. He responded with a gentle pressure of his paw against her side, then began the familiar scratching, precise and deliberate, the same spot as always. But this morning, something was different. There was a quiet urgency in his gaze, a subtle insistence in his movements that made her pause mid-sip. She studied him carefully, noticing how he glanced toward the hallway before returning his eyes to hers. His head tilted slightly, ears flicking as if listening for sounds she could not hear. The small gestures, once simply comforting, now carried weight. Purpose. Meaning. Her curiosity deepened, mingling with an unfamiliar sensation, a soft, anticipatory tension, like standing at the edge of a beautiful secret. She reached down, stroking his fur, feeling the warmth of his body press against her side. "I can feel it, boy," she murmured. "You're trying to tell me something. I don't know what yet." The dog paused, lifting his head to look at her fully, eyes bright and unwavering. Then, with a careful, deliberate nudge, he guided her hand slightly to the side, pressing it just above the spot he always scratched. She felt the connection in that simple gesture, the quiet communication they shared, and her heart tightened with a mix of wonder and anticipation. It was as if he was saying, "Pay attention. Notice. Understand." The day passed in a haze of quiet observation. She found herself glancing down at him repeatedly, noting every small action, the flick of his ears, the shift of his weight, the subtle pressure of his paw. Each movement seemed to carry significance, and the sense of purpose in his behavior had never been clearer. By evening, she felt compelled to act. She prepared herself quietly, gathering a sense of calm before heading to the doctor. The ritual had become too meaningful to ignore. Something in the dog's behavior suggested that it mattered, and she trusted him completely. The walk to the doctor's office was peaceful. Her dog trotted beside her, eyes alert, ears pricked, but calm. There was no rush, no fear, only a quiet focus, an awareness that guided her every step. She felt a subtle sense of partnership, as if he were walking beside her not just as a companion, but as a guide. Once inside, the doctor greeted her warmly. Routine checks began, and she answered questions quietly, her mind drifting intermittently to the dog's behavior at home. She noticed the familiar pattern, the subtle insistence, the quiet gestures that had led her here. Then came the moment of revelation. The doctor, reviewing her notes and gently examining her, paused with a thoughtful look. "You know," the doctor said softly, "there's something subtle but important here that most people overlook." Her heart quickened, not with fear, but with quiet anticipation. She glanced at her dog, remembering the nights of scratching, the patient nudges, the unwavering gaze. She felt the bond between them, the shared understanding, the quiet guidance he had given her all along. "You've been noticing something your dog has been trying to tell you," the doctor continued. "Dogs can sense subtle changes in the human body, sometimes before we even realize them ourselves. And in your case, he's pointing to a spot that needed attention." She listened carefully, breath slow, steady, letting the words sink in. Her mind flickered back to the evenings spent in warm lamplight, the nights filled with quiet scratching and insistent nudges. It all clicked into place, the purpose, the intent, the gentle communication. Her dog sat patiently at her side, head lifted, eyes calm but expectant. She reached down, stroking his soft fur. "You were right, boy, all along," she whispered. His gaze never left hers, patient, proud, unwavering. The revelation wasn't dramatic. There was no fear, no danger. Just understanding. Just the gentle, profound truth of intuition guiding her attention. It was beautiful in its simplicity, tender in its delivery, and powerful in its quiet way. As they left the doctor's office, sunlight spilled over the sidewalk, warming the two of them as they walked home. The dog trotted alongside her, tail swishing lazily, ears flicking at every soft sound. She felt a deep sense of gratitude, a quiet awe at the depth of his intuition, and a swelling love for the quiet, deliberate presence he offered every day. The evening returned with its soft golden glow. The lamp cast warm light across the living room, shadows curling gently along the walls. She sank onto the couch, the dog curling up beside her as always. His paw pressed softly against her side, head resting gently on her stomach. And in the soft rhythm of their familiar ritual, she felt the truth settle quietly in her chest. It had been there all along, the gentle guidance, the patient insistence, the quiet intuition of a companion who understood more than words could express. She reached down, brushing her hand along his back. "I think I finally understand," she whispered softly. "You've been helping me, all along." He responded with the smallest nudge, the tiniest pressure of his paw, eyes glimmering with that calm, knowing focus she had come to recognize so well. In that moment, the ordinary living room became extraordinary. Every shadow, every beam of light, every soft movement of his body carried meaning, warmth, and love. She leaned back, breathing slowly, letting the quiet settle around them. And in the soft glow of the lamp, the gentle rhythm of his breathing, and the warmth of his presence, she realized their bond was not just companionship. It was intuition, connection, trust. A shared understanding that transcended words, transcended ordinary life. And she knew, with quiet certainty, that the next step of their journey, whatever it would reveal, would be filled with love, gratitude, and the gentle beauty of understanding. The morning light seeped softly through the curtains, painting the walls in muted gold. The house was quiet, filled with that familiar sense of calm, the ticking of the clock, the faint rustle of leaves outside, the distant hum of life continuing beyond their window. But for her, nothing felt ordinary anymore. Every moment carried a subtle weight, a sense of anticipation, and a quiet understanding that something profound was unfolding. Her dog patted in as usual, ears alert, tail swishing slowly, eyes bright with purpose. He circled once, twice, then settled beside her, pressing his head gently against her stomach. The familiar scratching began, precise, deliberate, and full of intention. She leaned down, fingers brushing along his fur, letting her heart absorb the rhythm of the quiet ritual. "Every night, every day, you've been guiding me," she whispered softly. Her voice trembled slightly, not with fear, but with a delicate mixture of awe and gratitude. He lifted his head, meeting her gaze with patient focus, eyes calm yet insistent, as if affirming everything she was beginning to realize. She had started noticing more small hints, patterns in her body, fleeting discomforts she had ignored. And now, with his persistent guidance, she felt compelled to pay closer attention, to act on the signals he had been patiently pointing toward all along. By mid-morning, she was at the doctor's office again, accompanied by her ever-watchful companion. His calm presence eased her nerves, his quiet intuition a steady anchor. She sat on the examination table, hands brushing his soft fur, feeling his patient energy flow through her like a grounding force. The doctor returned with a gentle smile, holding the results and speaking in a calm, deliberate tone. "I think we found something subtle but significant," the doctor said. "It's not urgent or dangerous, but it explains why you may have been experiencing certain sensations your dog seemed to notice before you did." Her heart fluttered with a soft tension, anticipation threading through every beat. She looked down at her companion, whose gaze remained fixed on her, steady and unwavering. Every scratch, every nudge, every deliberate glance now made sense. He hadn't just been scratching out of habit or affection, he had been guiding her attention, communicating through gestures only she could feel, patiently leading her toward awareness. Tears pricked her eyes, unbidden but gentle, as she whispered, You knew all along, didn't you?" His tail swished softly, brushing against her arm. He leaned closer, resting his head lightly on her lap, eyes glimmering with quiet affirmation. The doctor continued, explaining the situation in calm, reassuring words. She listened intently, heart swelling with a mixture of relief and wonder. The dog's intuition had bridged a gap she hadn't even realized existed, highlighting the subtle signs her body had been giving all along. It was a turning point, not one of drama or fear, but of profound emotional clarity. She felt a wave of gratitude and love wash through her. Every evening, every soft paw against her side, every patient nudge had led her here. The connection they shared had revealed a truth she might never have discovered without him. Walking home, the sunlight warm against their backs, she felt an unshakable bond. He walked beside her, calm and focused, ears flicking at the smallest sounds, eyes ever watchful. She reached down, stroking his head gently, and he nudged her hand in response, a small but deliberate gesture that carried a depth of understanding she could feel in her chest. The evening returned with its soft golden glow, lamplight casting warmth across the living room. She sank onto the couch, pulling a blanket over her knees, the dog curling up beside her as always. The familiar scratching began again, precise and intentional, but now it felt different, less mysterious, more like a shared secret, a silent celebration of trust and intuition. She brushed her fingers along his back, letting the warmth of his body settle around her heart. "You led me here," she whispered. "All this time, you knew, didn't you?" He blinked slowly, eyes calm and affirming, tail swishing gently against the couch. She felt a quiet tear slide down her cheek, warmth pooling in her chest. The emotional turning point wasn't a single moment, it was a culmination of countless evenings, nights, and quiet interactions. The soft tension, the gentle curiosity, the patient guidance, it all came together in a moment of understanding that was both subtle and profound. Her heart ached with gratitude. She laughed softly through tears, a gentle, breathy sound that mingled with the rustle of leaves outside and the quiet hum of life inside. "I don't know how I got so lucky," she murmured, brushing a lock of hair behind her ear. "You've been guiding me, loving me, all along." He leaned closer, resting his head on her stomach, paw lightly pressed against her side. In that soft, golden glow, with the warmth of his body and the rhythm of his breathing, she felt the full depth of their connection. It was trust, love, and intuition intertwined, a bond that had quietly led her to awareness and understanding. And as she sat there, hand resting gently on his fur, she realized something else. The emotional turning point wasn't just about discovering the truth. It was about the journey, the nights filled with gentle scratching, the soft nudges, the unwavering gaze, the quiet patience. The revelation was beautiful, yes, but the love and connection that carried her there were even more profound. She leaned back, taking a slow, steady breath, letting the warmth and light wash over her. Her dog nudged her hand one last time before curling closer, eyes soft and knowing. And in that quiet, ordinary living room, she felt a wave of pure, unshakable gratitude. He had guided her, protected her, loved her not with words, not with alarms or urgency, but with the quiet, patient language of intuition. And she knew, with every fiber of her being, that their bond had transformed her, not just emotionally, but in ways that touched the core of her life. And as the lamp cast its warm glow over the two of them, she whispered softly, "Thank you, for seeing me, for guiding me, for loving me." He rested his head, eyes closing briefly in quiet contentment, and she felt the truth settle gently in her heart. The emotional turning point had arrived, not with fear, not with drama, but with love, trust, and understanding. And it was more beautiful than she had ever imagined. The evening settled softly over the house, wrapping everything in a warm, golden glow. The lamp on the side table cast gentle light across the living room, illuminating the soft edges of the couch, the folds of the blanket, the quiet shadow of her dog resting beside her. There was an extraordinary stillness in the air, a calm that felt alive with meaning. She sank into the couch, brushing a hand along his fur, feeling the familiar warmth of his body and the steady rhythm of his breathing. The nights of curiosity, observation, and gentle guidance had all led to this moment. She no longer questioned the reason behind his nightly ritual. She simply allowed herself to feel the bond that had deepened with each careful paw, each patient nudge, each soft glance. "Every night, every day, it all makes sense now," she whispered, her voice soft, filled with awe. He lifted his head, eyes meeting hers, calm but intensely focused. His presence was steady, unwavering, a silent affirmation of everything she had felt but not yet fully understood. The revelation came gently, like the first rays of sunrise spilling over the horizon. The doctor's words from earlier echoed in her mind. Dogs could sense subtle changes in the human body, changes that were often imperceptible to us. And in her dog's case, every scratch, every nudge, every deliberate gesture had been a message, a loving alert, a guide toward awareness. Her chest tightened with gratitude and wonder. She traced a line along his back, fingers trembling slightly. "You've been protecting me, helping me, all along," she murmured. He rested his head against her stomach, paw lightly pressing, eyes glimmering with gentle intelligence. She leaned back, taking a deep, slow breath, letting the soft glow of the lamp settle over her shoulders. The quiet of the house seemed to hum around them, filled with the weight of understanding, trust, and love. Every night of scratching had been a language, every patient look a sentence, every nudge a paragraph in a story that only they could read. Her mind wandered back to the early nights, the first time he had scratched that same spot, the slight tilt of his head, the way he had pressed against her with quiet insistence. She remembered laughing softly, brushing it off as a habit, and yet even then, she had felt it, the subtle thread of meaning woven through his actions. And now she understood fully. The gentle ritual was not random. It was deliberate. It was love expressed through intuition. It was guidance, quiet but unwavering, rooted in deep care and understanding. Her eyes filled with tears, not of fear or sadness, but of gratitude, wonder, and quiet joy. She whispered again, softly, "I don't know how I got so lucky, to have you, to notice, to understand." He responded with the smallest nudge of his nose, pressing closer, as if to say, "You saw it. You understood. And that's enough." The heart-touching truth was not just about the subtle signals he had sensed, it was about the connection, the relationship, the silent trust that had grown between them. He had been her guide, her comfort, her silent protector, and she had been his confidant, his patient observer, his partner in understanding. The evening stretched on, each moment infused with quiet tenderness. She rested her hand on his head, letting her fingers weave through his fur, feeling the warmth and the soft heartbeat beneath. Every sound, every shadow, every gentle movement of his body carried meaning, carried the weight of their shared journey. She smiled through tears, a soft, breathy laugh escaping her lips. "All this time, you've been helping me without saying a word. All this time. I didn't fully realize it, but now I do." He blinked slowly, eyes soft yet knowing, tail swishing gently. In that quiet gesture, she felt the depth of his devotion, the patient wisdom of his intuition, the loving insistence that had guided her all along. The truth settled over her like a warm blanket. It was simple, profound, and entirely beautiful. He had been looking out for her in the most delicate way possible, through love, attention, and intuition. There was no fear, no urgency, only the quiet certainty of a bond that transcended words. She pressed her cheek against his soft fur, breathing in the warmth, feeling the gentle rise and fall of his chest. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for seeing me, for guiding me, for loving me." The dog rested his head against her stomach, eyes closing briefly, tail swishing lazily. And in that shared quiet, she realized that the heart-touching truth was not just about what he had sensed, it was about the relationship itself. The trust, the patience, the mutual understanding, and the love that had grown between them was the real gift. Her heart swelled with emotion, a warmth that seemed to radiate from her chest outward. Every soft gesture, every gentle nudge, every deliberate glance was part of a conversation they had shared in silence, and it had brought her to a place of profound understanding and gratitude. She leaned back against the couch, letting the warmth of the evening settle around her. The lamp's soft glow illuminated the dog's calm form, his presence steady and reassuring. She felt a quiet certainty that their bond would continue to deepen, that the lessons of patience, observation, and love would remain with her always. And in that moment, she knew that the truth behind his actions was more beautiful than anyone could have imagined. It wasn't just about intuition. It wasn't just about guidance. It was about love expressed in the quietest, most patient, and most meaningful ways imaginable. She smiled softly, tears glimmering in her eyes, and whispered once more, "I understand now, and I will always remember." The dog rested quietly, eyes closing in contentment, head gently pressed against her stomach, paws softly brushing against her side. In the warm, golden-lit room, the ordinary had become extraordinary, the subtle had become profound, and the bond between human and dog had revealed its full, heart-touching truth. And she knew, without a shadow of doubt, that this connection, the love, the trust, the understanding, would last forever. The house was quiet that evening, bathed in the soft, golden glow of the setting sun. Shadows stretched gently across the living room, blending seamlessly with the warm lamplight, creating a space that felt safe, intimate, and full of calm. Every corner seemed to hum with the memories of the past weeks, the quiet nights, the soft scratches, the nudges, the unwavering gaze of her loyal companion. She sank into the couch, blanket draped over her knees, and let herself exhale slowly. Her dog padded in, his paws barely making a sound, and curled up beside her as he always had. But tonight felt different. There was a quiet sense of completion, a gentle emotional resolution that hadn't been there before. He rested his head lightly on her stomach, paw pressing softly against her side. And for the first time in weeks, she let herself simply breathe, feeling the depth of the bond between them without analyzing, without anticipating, without wondering. She just existed with him, fully present, fully connected. "Everything feels right now," she whispered softly, her voice calm, warm, and filled with gratitude. He blinked slowly, eyes glimmering with understanding, and nuzzled her hand with his nose. The familiar rhythm of their evening ritual continued, but now it was not a guide, not a message to decipher. It was a celebration, a shared acknowledgement of love, trust, and understanding. The weeks of gentle mystery had transformed into a profound emotional clarity. She no longer felt the quiet tension of anticipation, the gnawing curiosity that had kept her heart on edge. She had discovered the meaning behind his actions, the intention in every movement, and the wisdom in his patient gestures. And she realized something beautiful. The true gift had never been the discovery itself, but the journey, the connection that had grown between them through trust, observation, and love. She leaned down, brushing a hand along his soft fur, feeling the warmth of his body press close. "I don't think I've ever felt so seen, so understood," she whispered. His tail swished gently against the couch, a subtle, reassuring rhythm, as if he were affirming her words. Outside, the wind stirred the leaves, a soft whisper that mingled with the gentle hum of life beyond their window. The ordinary sounds of the world now felt extraordinary, infused with the quiet magic of shared understanding. Each moment carried a tenderness she had never known before, each breath seemed sweeter, each heartbeat deeper. She thought back to the first night he had scratched her, the careful, deliberate movements that had seemed so simple yet carried hidden meaning. She remembered the slow evenings of observation, the growing curiosity, the subtle sense of anticipation, and the quiet moments of connection that had shaped the weeks that followed. And now, in the still warmth of their living room, she felt a wave of gratitude for every single one of those moments. Her dog lifted his head slightly, eyes meeting hers with a calm, unwavering focus. She smiled softly, reaching down to stroke his ears. "You've taught me so much, about trust, about patience, about noticing the little things," she whispered. "And about love, real, gentle, patient love." He nudged her hand in response, small but deliberate, a reminder of the quiet partnership they shared. The room seemed to pulse with the intimacy of their bond. Light and shadow played softly across the walls, creating a cinematic warmth that mirrored the gentle flow of emotions in her chest. Every soft movement of his body, every patient look, every small nudge carried the weight of understanding, care, and devotion. For the first time, she allowed herself to rest fully in that feeling, no questions, no curiosity, no anticipation. Just presence. Just love. Just the quiet acknowledgement of the incredible bond they had built together. She whispered softly, almost to herself, "You've changed my life, boy, more than you'll ever know." And he rested his head against her stomach, eyes closing briefly in contentment, tail swishing gently, as if to say, "And you've changed mine too." Time seemed to stretch and fold in on itself, moments lingering in a warm, golden haze. She let herself enjoy the simple, tender joy of companionship, the quiet gratitude of understanding, the deep, unshakable sense of peace that comes from truly being seen and loved. The dog shifted slightly, nudging her hand again, and she laughed softly through tears, a gentle, breathy sound that echoed softly in the still room. "All this, it was never just about the scratching, was it?" she whispered. "It was about everything, about us." He blinked slowly, eyes calm and knowing, and rested once more against her side. The ritual continued, not out of necessity, but as a comforting, shared rhythm, a testament to the journey they had walked together, a quiet celebration of the emotional connection that had grown stronger every day. She leaned back against the couch, taking a slow, deep breath, letting herself feel every moment, every sensation, every small heartbeat of their bond. She felt lighter, freer, more present than she had in weeks. The emotional weight of anticipation and mystery had lifted, leaving only warmth, gratitude, and love. The final revelation was not dramatic, not sudden, not loud. It was quiet, soft, and tender, the realization that true connection, true understanding, and true love often come in small, patient gestures, shared quietly over time. Every nudge, every scratch, every glance had been a thread, weaving together a story of devotion, care, and intuition that neither time nor words could fully capture. And in that soft, golden-lit room, with the dog resting peacefully by her side, she understood fully, the healing had come not just from discovering the truth, but from the journey itself, from the nights of quiet attention, the soft rhythms of connection, and the unwavering trust that had guided them both to this place. She reached down one last time, pressing her fingers gently against his fur. "Thank you, for everything," she whispered. His tail swished lazily, ears flicked softly, and he rested closer still, a quiet affirmation of their shared journey. The evening stretched on, the room filled with warmth, quiet, and light. And she knew, deep in her heart, that their bond, the love, the trust, the intuition, and the shared journey would remain with her forever, a soft, enduring presence in her life. The dog nuzzled her hand one final time, eyes closing in contentment, and she leaned back, letting the warmth and light wrap around her, feeling a deep, unshakable sense of closure, healing, and love. In that quiet, ordinary living room, filled with golden light, soft shadows, and gentle breathing, she smiled through tears. And she whispered, softly, to her companion, to the bond they had built, and to the gentle truth they had discovered together. "We're home, and everything is beautiful."